Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Sports Corner. I'm Cole Young, and believe it or not, this is the final episode of 2023. It's been an insane year in the world of sports, with tons of highs and lows, twists and turns, and all kinds of new records set. For this final episode of the year, I thought I'd continue the annual tradition of recapping the year in sports. Ready? Here we go. In January, to start the year, the number one ranked Georgia Bulldogs won their second straight national championship after routing the TCU Horned Frogs 65-7. This was the most lopsided bowl game in college football history. Georgia became the first team to repeat as college football playoff national champions. Sticking with football, the NFL playoffs took place throughout the month of January. These games were absolutely electric, including an unprecedented comeback in the wild card round. Up 27-0 late in the first half, the Chargers blew the largest lead in franchise history and fell short 31-30 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who would eventually lose to the Chiefs in the following round. After defeating Jacksonville in their fifth straight AFC Championship appearance, the Chiefs got their revenge against the Bengals, sealing their seat in the Super Bowl. For the NFC, the Eagles coasted through the playoffs, dominating the Giants and the 49ers to punch their ticket in the Super Bowl. This led us to February with the Super Bowl stage set. The Eagles and Chiefs traveled to Glendale, Arizona for their shot at a Lombardi Trophy. Kansas City was able to hang on for a 38-35 win, marking their second Super Bowl win in just 4 years. Also in February, Tom Brady, the 7-time Super Bowl champion and 3-time NFL MVP, officially announced his retirement from the NFL. Technically, this was his second time announcing his retirement, but that's a longer story. Two more of the greatest athletes of all time had major accomplishments in February. First, LeBron James broke the NBA scoring record when he scored his record-breaking 38,388 point, overtaking a milestone that stood for nearly 39 years and was held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then, Novak Djokovic collected his record-extending 10th Australian Open championship and record-tying 22nd Grand Slam title. He also set the record for consecutive matches won at the Australian Open with 28. Moving on to March, most of the storylines revolved around baseball and basketball. Before the MLB regular season officially began, we were treated to the World Baseball Classic. Team USA played well throughout the tournament, fighting their way to the final round to face off against Team Japan. In one of those movie script moments, with Team USA down 3-2, there were 2 outs, no one on base, game on the line, and Mike Trout currently at the plate, and his Angels teammate Shohei Ohtani on the mound for Japan. Shohei struck out Trout to secure the victory for Japan, and, in hindsight, this single moment had some major foreshadowing for the near future. Of course, I couldn't mention March without talking about March Madness. In the men's bracket, for the second time in just 5 years, a number 16 seed upset a number 1 seed in the first round as Fairleigh Dickinson University pulled off one of the greatest upsets in history over Purdue. Throughout the men's tournament, local San Diego State University fought and scrapped their way to a national championship appearance. Unfortunately, their Cinderella story run would come to an end in the title game as they fell just short to UConn in the national championship. In the women's bracket, the sports world watched in awe as the twists and turns and the emergence of dominant players like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark unfolded. Iowa and LSU would make their ways through the bracket and earn spots in the national title game, where the LSU Tigers women's basketball team won its first ever national championship. In April, we were yet again treated to one of the most iconic sporting events in history, the Masters. This year, Jon Rahm finally won his green jacket. This was Rahm's 7th time playing in the Masters and his first victory. The MLB kicked off its season, and the Tampa Bay Rays had an absolute historic start to the year. The Rays started the season with 13 consecutive wins, tying the modern era record and the most since the 1884 St. Louis Maroons. We also saw the NFL draft, where Bryce Young was taken first overall by the Panthers and C.J. Stroud was taken immediately after by the Texans. In hindsight, the Panthers might regret that decision, but time will tell. Sticking with the NFL quarterbacks, in April, Aaron Rodgers officially became a New York Jet. The 4-time NFL MVP and Super Bowl champion was traded from the Packers to the Jets, and more on that later. On to May. The NBA and NHL playoffs were must-watch TV throughout the month. Our local Lakers defied the odds and won their way through the playoffs, earning a spot in the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, they were swept 4-0 by the Denver Nuggets. In the Eastern Conference, the underdog of all underdogs, the 8-seed Miami Heat, upset the top 3 seeds in a row to punch their ticket in the NBA Finals. In the NHL, the Panthers would dominate the Eastern bracket, while the Golden Knights breezed through the West, with both teams earning their spots in the Stanley Cup Finals. In the world of racing, the F1 season went underway, but it was apparent very early that Team Red Bull would end the season as champions. At this point, Team Red Bull had won every single race. Speaking of racing, Mage, the 3-year-old chestnut colt, pulled off an impressive come-from-behind victory at the 149th Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. Later in the month, Manchester City was crowned Premier League champions for the 2022-2023 season, completing the three-peat and their 5th Premier League title in the last 6 seasons. On to June. Halfway there, stick with me. The NBA Finals between the Denver Nuggets and Miami Heat tipped off, and the Denver Nuggets won their first NBA title in team history. Two-time MVP Nikola Jokic secured the title of Finals MVP after one of the most dominant playoff performances in history by any player. Speaking of first-time winners, the Las Vegas Golden Knights won their first title in team history in 5 games over the Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Knights have only been a franchise for 6 seasons, making that title even more impressive. I said it back in June, but June is the month full of different championships. In college sports, the baseball and softball World Series tournaments took place. On the women's side, the Oklahoma Sooners women's softball team clinched a 3rd consecutive national championship after winning 53 games in a row and finished up the past 3 seasons with a record of 176-8. For the men, LSU continued their year of victories. The Tigers baseball team pulled out an 18-4 victory over the Florida Gators in Game 3 of the College World Series, earning their first World Series title since 2009 and their 7th title overall. Through a hot July, the major events of the month were Wimbledon, the Open, and the Women's World Cup. On the tennis court, 20-year-old Carlos Alcaraz from El Palmar, Spain, shocked the world when he upset Novak Djokovic to earn his first Wimbledon title in one of the longest tennis matches in recorded history. For the women, Marketa Vondrousova won her first career Grand Slam and became the first unseeded woman to win Wimbledon in a stunning upset over Ons Jabeur. American Brian Harman pulled off an incredible upset and won his first major title at the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool later in the month. After a statement victory over Vietnam and a nail-biting draw with the Netherlands, the U.S. Women's World Cup team entered the tournament as a heavy favorite to win it all. Unfortunately, they would fall just short to Sweden in the round of 16, and Spain would go on to win and become the first European team to win the Women's World Cup since Germany in 2007. Fall finally approached, which meant football was just on the horizon. But first, in August, baseball was preparing for the postseason. The Angels announced they were not looking to trade Shohei Ohtani and were looking to make a deep playoff run instead. This would not work out in their favor. Sticking with baseball, though, the Little League World Series was played throughout the summer, and the championship game was set for August. California's El Segundo brought home the Little League World Series championship title after a 6-5 walk-off home run victory over the team from Curacao. September arrived and brought with it the start of the 2023 NFL season. Early on, the Chiefs and Dolphins looked like Super Bowl contenders, the Bengals got off to another slow start, the Broncos seemed to pick up where they left off, horribly, and the 49ers, Cowboys, Bills, and Lions looked like Super Bowl favorites as well. Remember I mentioned earlier in April that the Jets traded for MVP Aaron Rodgers? Well, in September, we finally got to see his debut in a Jets uniform. Sorta. 4 plays into the Jets season opener, Rodgers ruptured his Achilles tendon and it was announced he would miss the remainder of the season. In the college football realm, the University of Colorado football hype was at an all-time high as new head coach Deion Sanders looked to have completely revamped the program. At the U.S. Open of tennis, Novak Djokovic earned his record 24th Grand Slam singles title. For the women, 19-year-old Coco Gauff from Atlanta, Georgia won her first Grand Slam title after taking the U.S. Open women's singles title in 3 sets. Almost there. In October, the Denver Broncos ended the streak and finally defeated the Kansas City Chiefs for the first time since Week 2 of the 2015 season. This marked the start of their 5-game win streak and playoff push. As the NFL regular season continued on, the MLB season came to a close. All 4 of the first-round matchups ended in sweeps, and the #1 overall team, our hometown Dodgers, were swept by the underdog Arizona Diamondbacks in the NLDS. The Texas Rangers upset the Houston Astros in the ALCS, earning their spot in the World Series, taking on the Diamondbacks. Arizona shocked the world more than once in the playoffs, knocking out the Brewers, Dodgers, and Phillies. But for the first time in history, the Texas Rangers became World Series champions. The Las Vegas Aces then won their 2nd straight WNBA title over the New York Liberty, which cemented the Aces as the WNBA's first repeat champions in over 20 years. Sticking with incredible feats in women's sports, Simone Biles won her 21st gold medal at the World Gymnastics Championships. She made history as the most decorated gymnast of all time with a total of 34 championship medals. November and December are still pretty fresh in the memory, so I won't dwell on them for too long. The month started with rough news as Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, adding to the list of major injuries to some big-name players, specifically starting quarterbacks, this NFL season. The NFL playoff picture slowly began to take shape, while the F1 season came to its conclusion. As I said earlier, it came as completely zero surprise that Max Verstappen won his third straight world championship, capping the most dominant season by any driver in the sport's history with 19 race wins on the season. Naturally, this also meant that Red Bull won the Constructors' Cup. This all brings us to December. While we still have a week or so left in the month, a ton of major events have already happened. None bigger, however, than the announcement of Shohei Ohtani signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. As I mentioned just a week or so ago, Ohtani signed the largest contract in North American sports history worth $700 million. The other shocking news that was delivered this month was the announcement of the college football playoffs. The final four teams were Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Florida State became the first undefeated Power 5 conference champion to be left out of the playoff, and the two-time reigning national champion Georgia Bulldogs were also left out of the playoffs after an earth-shattering loss to Alabama. Like I said before, LSU continued their historic year when Tigers quarterback Jaden Daniels was named the Heisman Trophy winner. Then, to close out 2023, the Los Angeles Lakers officially won the first ever NBA in-season tournament, rolling past the Pacers, winning 123-109 to win the inaugural NBA Cup. That wraps up the year of 2023 in the sports world. I definitely missed some major events, but it's hard to keep track of all of it. This year in sports was my personal favorite in recent memory, so here's to hoping 2024 is full of more big games, stunning upsets, buzzer beaters, walk-offs, heartbreaking losses, triumphant wins, and much more. As always, thank you for joining me throughout the past year and all the time on Sports Corner. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. I'm Cole Young, thanks for tuning in, and see you all in 2024.